Trump was inaugurated, and most people around the world saw exactly what happened in the highlights, but here we're going to talk about the executive orders that were put into place that are going to change America as a whole. First, we need to mention this, though, real quick. What was this? What was this?
Thank you.
Sweet Baby Net is defending Sweet Baby Elon, doing this gesture, which is absolutely wild. He says it was a mistake and was misconstrued by the radical left, and also is quoted to say that Elon is a great friend of Israel. Not only has he visited, but he has on purpose not provided internet access to Gaza through his satellite company, Starlink. So he purposefully is avoiding providing internet access to Palestinians. Okay? So Net's like, no, Elon's our friend. By the way, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. But anyways, let's get to the executive orders because there's so much we can say about so many different things right now. Let's just talk about what's going to change in the United States. An executive order was signed, and an executive order means that this is mandated by the president as basically law, that federal workers have to go back into the office and cannot work from home. So they're in the office now 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. If people are exempt from working from in the office, if they have some sort of a handicap or whatever, that will be discussed between the agency heads and they can make exemptions, but that's going to be rare. The return to office mandate basically means that the federal workers who are working based on merit and how good they are at their jobs are going to turn into policy-related workers instead, which means that they will be stripped of their civil service protections. If they do not agree with the president, they can very easily, at will, be fired from their positions. So there was something that was put into place right as Trump was ending his first presidency that was called Schedule F. And basically, that was intended to help the president replace long-serving government workers who were secure in their positions and replace them with long-serving government workers that were loyal and faithful only to his agenda. So he is returning that back into office and into mandated, American society immediately. Yeah. This is going to be effective immediately. And in order to make sure that people are loyal to his agenda, he is also stopping all government hiring right now. So the executive action also freezes all government hiring. We know that people are hired into the government every single day, but that's not happening right now because they have to be vetted to see if they actually fit his policies and agree with what he wants to do so that they can work in this well-oiled machine that he is trying to create. Basically, if you disagree with any of his policies, you will be fired. That's basically what this is saying. And of course, if you're in a union, it doesn't matter anymore. Unions are supposed to be recognized and workers' rights are supposed to be taken care of if you're a part of a union. But an executive order would trump, for lack of better words, a union in this regard. Somebody else did this too. Just so you know. One thing I do like about this plan is that Trump agencies are saying they are going to fire all bureaucrats, and bureaucrats are the bane of our existence in this country because they follow very hardcore laws without keeping in mind what's best for the American public. It's kind of very cut and dry, black and white for them, and it's often at the expense of the American public. So bureaucrats should be fired, which I completely agree with for the most part. But the other things are a little abusive, a little as in a lot. And there's a lot of things that could be done to trump our rights. God, we're using that word Trump a lot, aren't we? The irony. Now let's talk about the executive order that blocks the birthright citizenship that has been enacted since the 14th Amendment. If you're not American or you're American, you don't know what this means. That basically is something that was enacted in 1868, right after the Civil War, that granted citizenship to all people born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people. Now, this is very important because this is the only reason why the 14th Amendment was made, was because enslaved people were freed after the Civil War and they didn't have any citizenship in this country. So they made the 14th Amendment to make sure that enslaved people who were freed could be American citizens. That's what it was made for. Since then, the 14th Amendment has been abused by migrants who have come to this country undocumented, and they've had kids in this country, and their kids are automatically American citizens. That's not what it was supposed to be, and Trump is trying to stop this from happening But it's not just migrants that are getting the benefit of abusing the system like this. This is the fourth wife of King Hussein of Jordan, who has since passed away. She was born an American citizen in Washington, D.C., but her parents were not American citizens. They just came here and had her and gave her the American passport. There are plenty of people who are extremely rich and famous, and some that are royal from around the world that just come to the United States to have their kids. Really, it's a lot of people all over the world. They're just coming to the United States to have their kids so that their kid can get an American passport and have all the benefits of being an American and having an American passport, and they're really not caring that they're American at all, and they have none of the American values. They don't even understand what it means to be an American, and that's a big problem if you're going to say you're American and have an American passport, but then you're never going to live here and you're never going to understand what it's like to be an American. That's not fair. Just reaping all the benefits of being an American without giving anything really back to us. So in that respect, yeah, I can agree with him on this, but this is only going to start in February. All of the people who were born before February in the United States are not going to have their citizenship revoked. That's just not going to happen. It's going to start with the kids that were born after February. But also, this can be overruled by a judge. It's not like this is going to be law. A judge has already blocked Trump's blatantly unconstitutional executive order that aims to end birthright citizenship. And yes, this is blatantly unconstitutional. This is against the 14th Amendment. And if this is going to be up for debate, it's going to be a lot of debate around this. There's no cut and dry. There's no black and white on this. This is going to be debated for a very long time if he tries to do this. But at the same time, his reasons behind it do make a lot of sense. We are the only country in the world that does this. If you're born in Japan, you're not Japanese, okay? If you're born in China, you're not Chinese. Not even Great Britain has this as a law. You can't just be born in Great Britain and suddenly be English. Like, no other country has this but the United States. And it is a huge problem. By the way, if you're liking this video, don't forget to comment. I want to hear what you have to say. And also like it and subscribe if you haven't already. Another thing that was signed into executive order is designating cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations, which they are. So this is definitely something that he did get right. If you don't live in the far west side of the world, like America, South America, Canada, you might not know much about the cartels and what's going on here. But to say that they're dangerous is an understatement. They have military-grade weapons, they're organized completely, and they are in mass scale. They're taking over entire cities in South America and Central America, Mexico. They are taking over cities in the United States as well, just on the DL. And their main thing is just organized crime. And the undocumented people that are coming over and doing this kind of thing are a huge problem in the United States. And there's a lot of drugs that are going in and out of this country because of that. However, also it's been proven many times over that the higher ups in this country are kind of funding it. So, but I mean, they'll chop people just like, I have to be careful with the community guidelines on YouTube. So, I mean, they're just like people, like literally, and they're just dismembered, you know? They're doing that to entire towns. They're taking over entire towns and doing this. Not in the United States, of course, but like in Central and Southern America. And then they are coming into the United States and wreaking havoc as well. So it's about time. They're called foreign terrorists. Organizations. However, they're not going after and deporting them first. They're raiding schools and churches to get the people who are most vulnerable and are trying to be law-abiding people in our country. They're trying to deport them first. And since my city of Chicago is actually an asylum city, which means a lot of people come here for asylum, ICE is actually targeting Chicago and asylum cities first, which to me, if we're being honest, and I'm completely in the realm of my free speech, at least now still, I think that this is a chump move. It is cowardly and petty to attack people when they are just at work and working in their warehouses and sending them back. Deporting these people who are paying taxes, not on their income, obviously, but they're at least working and paying taxes when they buy things here. They're targeting the people like washing dishes at taquerias first. That's a chump move. Go after these people. Go after these people. These are the ones that are causing the most problems. Why aren't they doing that? Are they scared? The next executive order is terminating race and gender affirmative action requirements for federal contractors. So that means basically that they can discriminate now with their hiring based on your race or your gender. At least that's the way it's been misconstrued by the media. What it really means is that you do not have to consider their race or their gender when you're making decisions on hiring. You just hire based on if they're qualified for the job, which makes sense. Unfortunately, a lot of businesses have to fit certain quotas to prove that they're not discriminating when they're hiring. Or they have to be grotesquely politically correct in ways that doesn't even make sense and could harm the public. For example, this person that was hired as a San Francisco department head of public health, or at least she's a consultant. Now, at first it looks okay because they're saying that she's a consultant on weight stigma and weight neutrality. And we're thinking, okay, so maybe this will end discrimination of unhealthy or obese people in the workplace, which is something that I think we can get behind. However, she's actually becoming a representative of public health in San Francisco, which obviously shouldn't be happening. She's quoted to say, "This consultancy is an absolute dream come true, and it's my biggest hope and belief that weight neutrality will be the future of public health." Yeah, that's a problem. Oxymoron. Let's just start there. I think we can all agree if you're morbidly obese, you should not be a spokesperson for public health. Simultaneously, if you are extremely skinny, that doesn't mean you're healthy either. You would have to live a healthy lifestyle, or at least pass. But this doesn't even nearly pass. That is what Trump is trying to do here, to assure that people who are qualified for positions are in their positions instead of people who are just meeting some sort of a quota. And again, this is mostly for government contractors, people who are working directly with the government. So that makes sense. Like, why would you want someone unqualified for the job to get a government contract over somebody who actually is qualified for the job but might be white or might be male, and they're trying to fit a quota? So instead they hire someone who is not as qualified just because they fit the narrative of what is supposed to be hired, so they don't get charged with some sort of discrimination lawsuit. But as with everything, if this is not clearly lined out, which it hasn't been, they haven't made this very clear, this can always be abused and make it very easy for people to just discriminate based on your race, or based on your gender, or based on your identity, sexually or otherwise. This executive order allows that to happen. There is leeway there for it to occur, and that's a big problem. It needs to be a lot more clear in outlining these executive orders so that not only the public understands it, but also so do the hiring managers. Executive orders like this can bring leeway for a lot of people's inner demons to come out. And we've actually seen this online in comment sections way more lately in the United States, where people are just feeling way more free to fly their freak flag, if you will, and be incredibly discriminatory, racist, harass people because our leader is now kind of having an open gate for us to do that sort of thing here. And I don't think that's necessarily what he intended, but not being so clear in your outlines of what your plan is and what you actually mean in these executive orders is causing a lot of people to let that freak flag fly. I mean, it's not good. This could definitely harm more Americans than it helps if he's not clear. Another executive order that Trump put into place was naming 2 genders and 2 genders only. The main purpose was to defend women from gender ideology extremism and restoring the biological truth. So, all federal employees and federal paperwork will use the term sex and not gender, because gender can be transformed, sex cannot. There are only 2 sexes, which is XY and XX chromosomes. We cannot argue with science. Science is science, whether you are liberal or you're conservative. They're saying that this is to make sure males are not in female detention centers as well and causing problems and R words there. That women have privacy in intimate spaces only meant for women, such as changing centers, gym locker rooms, and so on. Because they're fearing predators are actually the ones that are cosplaying as females and gaining access to intimate single-sex spaces and activities designed for women. So that's including sports. And we have seen that when biological males do enter female sports, they end up busting their skulls, breaking their hands. Like, it is crazy. Within like 30 seconds, these women are completely snapped in half. And it is because they are biological men, and biologically, they are a lot stronger. Let's be honest. They're also saying that these people that they believe are cosplaying as women are entering the women's shelters, especially domestic abuse shelters and women's workplace showers, and they're saying this is wrong. Here's what I think about this, and I'm going to use Blair White as just the background for this because she's a notorious trans woman who is also a conservative. Someone who looks like this and is passing as a woman and living their life as a woman should not have to put on their identification that they are male. First of all, that is going to confuse everyone. Even when you're trying to get into the country, leave the country, go through customs is what I'm saying. Also, checking your ID in any form. It's going to look like a mistake on the ID card. So it doesn't even make sense to say that she is a male on her ID. It doesn't make any sense. Similarly, it makes zero sense to have Blair White go into a male prison. Do you know what will happen to Blair White in a male prison? Again, there is so much gray area here that we cannot do this as a black and white, cut and dry thing. There can be some serious problems if we do this very cut and dry. There's always an in-between. There's always a way to have this go to court, basically, and be able to argue your case. I mean, this is why there are courts to begin with, because if somebody murders someone, right, that doesn't mean they automatically get the electric chair. There's a lot of details involved as to what happened, why, how this happened, and so on. And that determines what this person actually deserves as a repercussion, what this person actually deserves as their future. I believe needs to happen, and again, I have free speech still, at least right now, so I'm gonna say it. We need to make transgender just legal throughout, across the board. Across the board, everyone has equal rights, period. Because if everyone has equal rights, period, then we can weed out who the real predators actually are. And it's not Blair White. Blair White's not going into women's changing rooms and checking people out and trying to make them feel uncomfortable. She's trying to live her life as a woman, period. The end. Is she stronger than most women, most likely, because she was born male and went through male puberty? Probably. So that would be a separate issue that we would be talking about regarding women's sports. That has nothing to do with actually having her go to a male prison or not. That's why we need to make sure that the people who are actually like Blair White, and there are a lot of people who are trans living their lives as women, are not going to male prisons, because that's also putting them in jeopardy, them in danger. We should be fighting for the rights of all Americans, period. Everyone should have equal rights. Everyone. So that when they are predators, when they are going into intimate spaces and doing crazy things, that they're labeled predators and not simply just trans. Because that gives a really bad name to the trans community when they're not like that. It's not that trans people are cosplaying the other gender that they weren't born in biologically. It's that oftentimes it's the predators that are cosplaying the trans people. So let's make everything legal so we can call out the predators. Because right now, if you call out a predator who is cosplaying as a trans person, you are called transphobic. And that is a huge problem. Making trans people who are detained go to men's prisons, like this is saying in this executive order, is not the answer. That's just going to cause more problems. And if we're really going to protect rights, we need to protect rights of all Americans, regardless of if you agree if they are male or female. And it's our right to be safe. And that includes trans rights to be safe. You can't just send them to male prisons. You can't just do that. There's so much gray area here, and this needs to be looked at a lot more in depth, and it just can't be laid out like this, and you just go through with it without having each case by case basis decided on by a court. But again, that would take forever to do. So they're just going to black and white, cut and dry this, and a lot of people are going to be hurt in the process. Another executive order that was just passed was regarding healthcare, and it was meant to erase Biden's health legacy that he implemented, making our prescription costs less with Medicare and Medicaid. We know there's a major problem with healthcare in this country. It has made worldwide news, and pretty much no one in other countries can really believe that us, as a leader of the free world, do not have health care at all. If we break our arm, we're in debt for life. If you want to have a kid without private insurance, you have $1 million in medical bills. But this executive order is looking like it's going to cost us even more. So this is another one that I want a little bit more information on. And since it was literally just passed, like today, I don't think we have too much information on it yet. But this can't possibly mean that it's going to cost us more, right? I think we're going to need a lot more of these, if that's the case. But I find it really interesting that this headline from NPR says Biden's health legacy, because the legacy of Biden isn't much. And also, we're questioning who actually was in charge all of Biden's presidency. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, put this very eloquently, and while I do not like this guy personally, he did say something very interesting that I want you guys to see.
In some ways, I actually kind of feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean, he's in the twilight years of his life. He is not, obviously has not been in charge for some time. And I know this by personal observation, and now the whole world knows it, and it's been very concerning to me over the last, year and a half since I've had this position.
Can you tell us a story when you say personal observation? What kind of thing do you see?
It's public now because the Wall Street Journal got it and put it on the front page. But January a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had been asked, I became Speaker in October 2023, and there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on, and I started requesting a meeting with the President because, I'm kind of old school. I'm a constitutional law guy. The Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the President, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him, and his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line to the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill Press Corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over, just like this, we're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Will y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief, so everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? I don't understand. Liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're going to conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country?
Chilling words. We're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? The fact that he said the CIA was sitting in there, very interesting. Now that Trump is in office, he is rolling back a lot of things that Biden had put into place and looking very detailed into the executive orders that Biden had actually signed. Who was in charge at that point? No one really seems to be asking those questions, and those are important questions. Who was in charge of our country during Biden's presidency? Well, now we know who's running it, and he's definitely making his points known right away. Although I do think a lot of it is being misconstrued, and he is looking out for the benefit of our country and American citizens, or at least doing his best to do that at this point, as that was one of his executive orders, America First, Policy Directive to the Secretary of State. Executive order, just signed this week. And we should have America First. We're Americans. Why are our taxes going all overseas when we have nothing to show for them? Why are we taxed 30% on our paycheck, and then at the end of the year, we're taxed on our paychecks again at the end of the year when the IRS comes after us? Why do we have to also pay taxes on everything we buy? 10%, sometimes 12, sometimes 13%. Why is it that when we own property, we have to pay taxes on it every year? And sometimes it's like $2,000 or more. Even if we own the property, we're paying a mortgage, we're paying rent on that property until we die, but we own it. Why do we have to pay a death tax? We pay taxes after we die. And so do our families. They pay taxes on our death. Taxes in this country go on, and we have nothing to show for it. We do not have free education. We have to pay for our education if we go to university or college. We have to pay for all of our health care directly out of pocket. And our health care is not cheap. It's all going overseas, which is why I like the idea of America First. But again, what does this actually mean? Are we going to stop going to war? Are we going to stop sending stuff overseas, millions and billions of dollars to other countries? Or are we going to keep it within? I want to know what this means. Ultimately, there are a lot of good things that he is doing that people are not giving him credit for. But at the same time, there are a lot of iffy things that have a lot of gray area that could cause some really big problems. And I have a big issue with. If he's going to make this a change so rapidly, he needs to explain these changes in detail to the American citizens, because we deserve that. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to comment, because I want to hear what you have to say. Even if you're not from the United States, what do you think about this? Has this video opened your eyes to anything? Have you thought of anything different that maybe we should be asking to ourselves? Let me know. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.